It's funny how your life can shatter in exactly 14 seconds. That's how long it took me to open the envelope, unfold the bank statement inside, and realize that my wife of 25 years had been systematically draining our retirement accounts. 14 seconds to destroy a quarter-century of trust. 14 seconds to reveal that the woman sleeping beside me each night was a stranger wearing my wife's face. I remember staring at that statement, the numbers blurring as my hand began to tremble. $300,000. Gone. And that was just from one account. My name is Mark Reynolds. 3 months ago, I was a successful logistics manager looking forward to early retirement. Today, I'm sitting across from my wife's lover's wife, plotting the downfall of the people who tried to destroy us. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I did it, Laura. I finally did it. I still remember how my voice cracked with excitement as I burst through our front door that Friday evening. March 15th. The Ides of March. Even now, the irony isn't lost on me. Laura looked up from her tablet, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. At 53, she was still striking. Ash blonde hair expertly colored to hide the gray, body toned from what I'd always assumed were dedicated hours at the gym. 25 years of marriage, and the sight of her still made my heart skip. "Did what?" she asked, placing her tablet down. I loosened my tie and collapsed onto our leather sofa, grinning like a fool. "I submitted my retirement paperwork. Thompson approved it this morning." Laura's expression flickered, just for a moment, before settling into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. At the time, I attributed her hesitation to surprise. That's wonderful, Mark. I thought you were going to wait until the end of the year?" I shook my head, excitement bubbling through me. "The company's offering an early retirement package. If I take it now, we get an extra $100,000 in the retirement fund. It's a no-brainer." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We can finally do it, honey. All those trips we've been talking about for years. Paris in the spring, that Mediterranean cruise, the Amalfi Coast." I was practically babbling. Decades of deferred dreams suddenly within reach. Laura's fingers remained limp in my grasp. "It's just so sudden." "I know. But why wait? We've been saving for this our whole lives. 25 years of planning, of being responsible, of putting money away instead of spending it on luxuries." I pulled her closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "It's our time now, Laura. Just you and me, seeing the world together." She smiled again, but something in her eyes made me pause. A wariness, a calculation. But then she leaned forward and kissed me, and I forgot all about it. "Let's celebrate," she said, her voice warm with what I mistook for affection. "I'll call La Maison and see if they can squeeze us in for dinner." That night, we drank expensive champagne and made plans for our future. Or rather, I made plans while Laura nodded and smiled. I was too caught up in my excitement to notice how rarely she contributed, how her gaze occasionally drifted to her phone, how she excused herself to the restroom 3 times during our meal. It was the last truly happy night of my marriage. If Laura had been more careful, I might never have found out. But complacency makes people sloppy, and she'd grown complacent after years of successful deception. It started with a letter from a bank I didn't recognize, addressed to Laura, marked confidential. It had slipped behind the mail sorter, and I found it while cleaning. I wasn't snooping, not then, at least. I simply placed it on her desk with the rest of her mail. But its existence nagged at me. We'd always managed our finances jointly. What business could Laura have with a bank I'd never heard of? "Just an old account from before we were married," she explained when I casually mentioned it. "I keep meaning to close it, but you know how it is. Paperwork." I nodded and let it go. But that night, I lay awake beside her, listening to her steady breathing and wondering what else I didn't know. The next day, I checked our joint accounts. Everything seemed in order. Then, on a hunch, I pulled up our tax returns from the past few years. Again, nothing unusual. But as I clicked through the digital files, I noticed something odd. Our reported investment income had decreased steadily, despite the bull market. That's when I started digging in earnest. I took a day off work without telling Laura and spent the morning calling our investment firms, requesting statements for accounts I knew about. Then I visited our safe deposit box at the bank, where we kept important documents. That's where I found the first hard evidence, statements from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands with Laura's name on them, dating back 5 years. Regular deposits, substantial ones. My hands trembled as I photographed the documents with my phone. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Back home, I searched her office while she was at her supposed Pilates class. Inside a locked drawer, the key hidden in a hollowed-out book on her shelf, I found more statements, more accounts, and something else, receipts for a luxury condo in a downtown high-rise purchased 3 years ago. Not in our name, in hers, and someone named Ryan Williams. I sat on our bed that night, surrounded by copies of the evidence, and calculated the damage, nearly $1.7 million siphoned from our retirement accounts and investments over 6 years. Almost half of everything we'd saved. My stomach churned. 25 years of brown bag lunches and delayed gratification, 25 years of choosing practical over lavish, 25 years of we'll travel when we retire. All of it betrayed. I didn't confront her immediately. Something cold and calculating had awakened inside me, a stranger to my normally straightforward personality. This woman, this thief who wore my wife's face, had been playing me for years. I needed to understand the full scope of her betrayal before I made my move. So I hired a private investigator. His name was Eric Donovan, a retired police detective who now specialized in infidelity cases. He charged by the day, plus expenses, and was worth every penny. Classic situation, he told me after a week of surveillance, sliding photographs across his desk. Older, wealthy spouse, younger affair partner, financial exploitation. I stared at the photos, my throat tight. Laura, my Laura, entering a luxury high-rise. Laura, laughing over lunch at an expensive restaurant I'd never been to. Laura kissing a man at least 15 years her junior, athletic, tanned, with the sculpted physique of someone who spends more time on his appearance than on developing a personality. His name is Ryan Williams, Donovan explained. 34 years old, works as a personal trainer at Elite Fitness. That's where they met, about 7 years ago. He's married, too. Wife named Emily Williams, 32. No kids. She's a graphic designer, works from home. Does his wife know? My voice sounded distant, as though coming from someone else. Donovan shook his head. Doesn't appear so. Your wife and Williams are careful. They only meet at the condo or at places where they're unlikely to be recognized. I nodded, flipping through more photos. And the money? She's been funding a lavish lifestyle for both of them. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, luxury vacations disguised as wellness retreats or business trips. The condo alone cost nearly $500,000, and the maintenance fees are outrageous. But the bulk of the money is in investment accounts, some in her name only, some jointly held with Williams. I closed the folder, unable to look anymore. She's been planning to leave me. It wasn't a question, but Donovan answered anyway. Yes. My guess is she was waiting until the accounts were sufficiently drained, or until she could figure out how to access the remaining retirement funds without your knowledge. He hesitated. Your retirement announcement probably accelerated her timeline. Of course. She'd been stalling me for years on retirement, always finding reasons why we should wait just a little longer. Now I understood why. I want to continue the surveillance, I said. And I want you to look into this Ryan Williams more deeply. Find his vulnerabilities. Donovan raised an eyebrow. You're not planning anything illegal, are you, Mr. Reynolds? I met his gaze steadily. I'm planning justice. I waited another week before confronting Laura, using the time to secure what assets I could and consult with a divorce attorney. Pennsylvania is an equitable distribution state, but proving financial fraud would be crucial in protecting what remained of our nest egg. She came home late on a Thursday evening, smelling of expensive perfume and looking slightly flushed. Date night with her lover, no doubt. "We need to talk," I said as she set her purse down. Laura sighed as though inconvenienced. "Can it wait until morning?" "I'm exhausted." "No, it can't." I placed a folder on the kitchen counter between us. "I know about the money, Laura. I know about Ryan." Her expression didn't change immediately. Then slowly, a transformation occurred. The mask of my loving wife slipped away, revealing a stranger with cold, calculating eyes. "How long have you known?" she asked, making no attempt to deny it. "Long enough." She nodded, then reached for a glass and poured herself some water, as calm as if we were discussing a minor household matter. "I suppose you're upset." The understatement was so enormous, so absurd, that I nearly laughed. "Upset? You've stolen nearly $2 million from our retirement accounts to fund an affair with a man young enough to be our son. Upset doesn't begin to cover it." Laura took a sip of water, her gaze assessing. "What do you want, Mark? A tearful confession? Begging for forgiveness?" Her lip curled slightly. "That was never our dynamic." "Our dynamic? We've been married for 25 years. "Yes, and for 20 of those years, I've been bored out of my mind." She set the glass down with a sharp click. "Do you have any idea what it's been like? Living with your endless caution, your constant frugality, your pathetic little dreams of seeing Paris someday? Someday, always someday." Each word landed like a physical blow. "We were saving for our future," I managed. "For our retirement." "No, Mark. You were saving. I was surviving." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a contemptuous whisper. "You were only good for the paycheck. Now you're just dead weight." I stared at this woman, this absolute stranger, and felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had shattered the moment I'd found the first bank statement. No, this was something else. My illusions, perhaps. Or maybe the last vestiges of the man I'd been. Trusting, straightforward, decent. "I want a divorce," I said quietly. Laura laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Of course you do. And you think you'll get everything, don't you? Poor, betrayed Mark, victim of his scheming wife." She shook her head. "But you've always been bad at seeing the whole board, Mark. That's why I handled our investments." "What are you talking about?" "I've been planning this for years. Those accounts you found? Barely the tip of the iceberg? And every transfer? Every withdrawal?" Her smile was vicious. "Your signature is on all of them." Ice spread through my veins. "That's impossible. I never signed—" "Not consciously, no. But you sign a lot of things without reading them, don't you, Mark? Insurance forms, tax documents, power of attorney forms." The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You forged my signature. Prove it." She picked up her purse. "I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. Have your things out by the weekend." As she turned to leave, I found my voice again. "You won't get away with this, Laura." She paused at the door, looking back with something like pity. "I already have. 25 years of your life, your savings, your trust, all gone. And there's nothing you can do about it." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone in the kitchen of what I now realized had never really been our home. I spent that night in a haze of rage and despair, alternating between bouts of furious pacing and periods of numb silence. By morning, something had crystallized within me, a cold, clear purpose. Laura thought she'd broken me. She expected me to crumble, to retreat, to slink away in defeated shame, while she and her young lover enjoyed their ill-gotten gains. She'd always seen me as predictable, cautious to a fault. It was time to become unpredictable. I called in sick to work and spent the day making a list of everyone who knew Laura and me as a couple. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, people from our church. Then I started making calls. "I'm not sure what to do," I told our next-door neighbor, my voice carefully modulated to sound embarrassed and slightly broken. "The debts have just piled up so high. Laura's devastated." "Debts? What debts?" Martha Simmons had known us for 15 years and had never heard me mention financial troubles, because there had never been any. It's hard to talk about," I said, letting my voice crack. "Bad investments, some gambling problems I couldn't control. We're facing bankruptcy and Laura—" I paused for effect. "Well, she's standing by me, but this isn't what she signed up for." Similar conversations played out over the next few days. To some, I hinted at gambling debts. To others, failed investments or medical expenses not covered by insurance. The story varied slightly, but the core remained the same. I had secretly ruined us financially, and Laura was the supportive wife dealing with the fallout. Word spread quickly through our social circles, just as I'd intended. I made sure to be seen looking haggard at the grocery store, to be overheard canceling our country club membership due to unexpected financial difficulties, to be caught scanning the classifieds for lower-paying jobs. While this performance played out publicly, I was making other moves behind the scenes. Following my attorney's advice, I documented everything I could find related to Laura's theft and affair. I froze the accounts I still had access to and changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance policy from Laura to my sister. Then, exactly 9 days after Laura had walked out, I contacted Ryan Williams's wife. Emily Williams opened her front door with the wary expression of someone who has recently had their world turned upside down. She was younger than I'd expected, early 30s at most, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and the kind of natural beauty that requires no enhancement. "Mr. Reynolds?" she asked, her voice tight. I nodded. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Mrs. Williams." "Emily, please." She stepped back to let me in. "And let's skip the pleasantries. You said on the phone that you have information about my husband and your wife." The interior of their home was modestly furnished, a stark contrast to the luxury condo where Ryan met Laura. I wondered how much Emily knew about her husband's double life. I placed my folder on her coffee table. "How much has Ryan told you?" Emily's laugh was brittle. "About his affair with your wife?" "Nothing. I found out 2 weeks ago when I came across receipts for jewelry I've never received and hotel stays I wasn't part of." She crossed her arms. I confronted him. He admitted to the affair but swore it was just physical. Nothing serious. I opened the folder and slid out photographs of the condo purchase agreement with both Laura's and Ryan's signatures. "I'm afraid it's more than physical." Emily stared at the document, her face paling. "They bought property together?" "A luxury condo downtown. Nearly $500,000, and that's just the beginning." I showed her more documents, bank statements, investment accounts, credit card bills. "They've been siphoning money from my retirement accounts for years. Nearly $2 million so far." $2 million? Emily sank onto the couch, her hands trembling as she flipped through the evidence. "Ryan told me he couldn't afford to help me go back to school." "There's more," I said quietly. "My wife has forged my signature on numerous documents, including power of attorney forms. She's been liquidating our investments and transferring the funds to offshore accounts, some in her name only. And some jointly with Ryan," Emily finished, looking up with dawning horror. "Is my name on any of these? Could I be legally implicated?" I shook my head. "Not from what I've found, but Ryan certainly is. These transactions constitute fraud, grand theft, and possibly money laundering." Emily stood abruptly, pacing the small living room. "Why are you showing me this? What do you want from me?" "An alliance." I leaned forward. They think they've won. Laura believes I'm broken, a defeated old man who will slink away with whatever scraps she deigns to leave me. She's spreading rumors that I'm in financial trouble, that I've gambled away our savings. And are you letting her? For now. I met Emily's gaze steadily. Because while she's busy enjoying her victory, watching me flounder publicly, she's not watching her accounts. She's not noticing the evidence being gathered. She's not seeing the trap being set. Emily stopped pacing. What kind of trap? The kind that requires a partner. I gestured to the chair across from me. How much do you know about digital forensics, Emily? A slow smile spread across her face. Not warm, but coldly satisfied. I'm a graphic designer with a background in IT security. I know enough. For the first time since discovering Laura's betrayal, I felt something like hope. Then I think we have a lot to discuss. The next 3 months were a masterclass in patience and calculation, qualities I'd possessed all along but had never applied to deception. Laura had always dismissed me as simple and straightforward. Now, that perception became my greatest weapon. Emily proved to be more than an ally. She was a revelation. Beneath her quiet exterior lay a brilliant mind with an unexpected talent for strategic thinking. While I continued my public performance as a broken man drowning in debt, Emily worked behind the scenes, tracking Laura and Ryan's movements, documenting their transactions, and building our case. They're getting nervous, Emily reported during one of our regular meetings at a coffee shop 3 towns over. We'd established a routine, meeting twice weekly to exchange information, always in places where we wouldn't be recognized. The rumors are working, I agreed, sipping my black coffee. Laura's had to transfer nearly $300,000 from their offshore accounts back into our joint accounts to maintain appearances. Emily nodded, sliding her laptop toward me. And look at this. Ryan's been selling off assets, expensive watches, that boat he bought last year. He's liquidating quickly. I studied the financial tracking sheet she'd created. They're planning to run. Soon, Emily confirmed. Based on their recent searches and communications, they're looking at properties in Costa Rica. No extradition treaty. Then it's time for Phase 2. Phase 2 involved a calculated escalation. I began making more public references to legal negotiations with Laura. I was seen consulting with my attorney in visible locations. I made a show of gathering financial documents and meeting with forensic accountants. The pressure had the desired effect. Laura called me 2 days later. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed, not bothering with a greeting. "Hello, Laura. Nice to hear from you too." Cut the crap, Mark. I've heard you're talking to forensic accountants. What exactly are you hoping to prove? I kept my voice even. Just trying to get my financial house in order. It's been quite a mess, as you know. If you think you can threaten me... No threats, Laura. Just organizing my affairs. I paused. By the way, I noticed some unusual transfers back into our joint accounts recently. Quite generous of you. There was a moment of silence then. I don't want you destitute, Mark. Despite everything, we were married for a long time. The false concern in her voice made bile rise in my throat. How considerate. Will you be equally generous with the remaining retirement funds? The ones in the Cayman account? Another silence, longer this time. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. I allowed myself a small smile. Give my best to Ryan. I hung up before she could respond. The next day, Laura emptied the offshore account, nearly $800,000, and transferred it to a new account, one I hadn't previously known about. But Emily had anticipated this move and had already placed a tracking program on Laura's laptop. Within hours, we had the details of the new account. They're accelerating their timeline, Emily said, her voice tense. Based on Ryan's recent purchases, travel adapters, tropical weight clothing, Spanish language guides, They're planning to leave within 2 weeks. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. Then so are we. The final phase of our plan required precise timing and a touch of theatrical flair. I arranged a meeting with Laura through my attorney, ostensibly to discuss a settlement offer. The location, the conference room at my attorney's office, a suitably formal setting for what Laura undoubtedly expected to be my surrender. What she didn't know was that Emily and I had spent the previous night preparing the room, with my attorney's bemused cooperation. Tiny cameras were strategically placed to capture every angle. Documents were arranged with meticulous care, and a sealed envelope, the centerpiece of our performance, was placed at Laura's designated seat. She arrived exactly on time, dressed immaculately in a navy blue suit that probably cost more than a month of my salary. Ryan wasn't with her, another calculated risk on our part that had paid off. She'd come alone, confident in her control of the situation. "Mark," she acknowledged with a cool nod. "Let's make this quick. I have appointments. In Costa Rica, no doubt." "Of course," I gestured to the chair. "Please sit." My attorney, James Wilson, sat beside me, his expression professionally neutral. "Mrs. Reynolds, before we begin, I should inform you that this meeting is being recorded with the consent of my client." Laura raised an eyebrow but showed no concern. "Fine. Now, what's this settlement offer I've heard about?" I placed a folder on the table between us. Inside is a complete accounting of our marital assets, including the funds transferred to offshore accounts over the past 6 years. Her expression didn't change, but I noticed her fingers tighten slightly on her purse. "I've already explained that any unusual transactions were authorized investments." "Authorized by whom?" I asked quietly. "By you, obviously." Her smile was thin. "Your signature is on every document." "Forged signatures," my attorney interjected smoothly. Laura's smile didn't waver. "Prove it." That was my cue. I slid the sealed envelope toward her. "This arrived yesterday. I thought you might want to see it." Laura eyed the envelope suspiciously. "What is this?" "Open it and find out." With a slight roll of her eyes, she picked up the envelope and tore it open. Inside was a single document, a notarized confession bearing her signature, admitting to the embezzlement of funds from our joint accounts and the forgery of my signature on multiple financial documents. Her face drained of color as she read. This is absurd. I never signed this." "Didn't you?" I leaned forward. "Look at the date." Her eyes darted to the top of the page, March 10th, 5 days before I'd announced my retirement. "That's the day you asked me to sign those power of attorney forms for the estate planning," I reminded her. "You were in such a hurry that morning, remember?" 3 documents, you said. But there were 4. The 4th was underneath, a blank page with just a signature line, which you quickly flipped past. Laura's hands began to tremble. "This won't hold up." "I'll deny it." "You can try," my attorney said, "but the forensic document examiner has already confirmed the signature is authentic, and then there's the matter of the recording." Laura's head snapped up. "What recording?" I nodded to Wilson, who pressed a button on his laptop. A video began to play on the wall-mounted screen. Laura and Ryan in their luxury condo, discussing their plans. "Once Mark signs those power of attorney forms, we can liquidate the rest of the accounts," Laura was saying, her voice perfectly clear in the high-quality recording. "He never reads what he signs anyway." "What about the signatures on the previous transfers?" Ryan asked. Laura's laugh was cold. "I've been forging his signature for years. He hasn't noticed yet." I stopped the video. Laura sat frozen, her face a mask of shock and rage. "That's illegal," she finally managed. "You can't record people without their consent." "Actually," Emily said, stepping into the room from the adjoining office, "I can when it's my property being discussed." Laura's head whipped around. "Who the hell are you?" "Emily Williams." Ryan's wife. Emily placed a USB drive on the table. Co-owner of the condo where this conversation took place. The condo purchased with funds stolen from Mark's retirement accounts and registered in my name as well as Ryan's, a detail he apparently neglected to share with you. Laura's eyes widened in dawning comprehension. You two, have been working together for months, I finished. Tracking every transaction, documenting every conversation, building an airtight case against both you and Ryan. Speaking of Ryan, Emily added, checking her watch. He should be receiving a similar surprise right about now. 2 detectives and a forensic accountant are currently executing a search warrant at his gym office. Laura lunged for her purse, presumably for her phone, but my attorney was faster, sliding it out of reach. That won't be necessary, Mrs. Reynolds, a new voice said from the doorway. Detective Samuels, a solidly built man in his 40s, stepped into the room, accompanied by a uniformed officer. We already have everything we need. Laura's gaze darted frantically between us, the calculation in her eyes giving way to panic. This is a setup. Mark invented all of this because I left him. The evidence suggests otherwise, Samuels replied, his tone professional. Laura Reynolds, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and conspiracy to commit grand theft. You have the right to remain silent. As the detective continued reciting her rights, Laura's eyes locked with mine. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in them. Good. Let her feel a fraction of the devastation she'd inflicted on me. When Samuels paused, I leaned forward, my voice low enough that only Laura could hear. Turns out you were only good for the confession. Something broke behind her eyes then. Her absolute certainty in her own cleverness, perhaps. Or maybe just the realization that she'd underestimated me all along. As the officer led her toward the door, Laura glanced back, catching sight of Emily standing beside me. Not as lovers, as she might have suspected, but as allies united by a common betrayal and a shared resolve for justice. Just before she was led from the room, the faintest smirk crossed Emily's face, a private signal between conspirators that went beyond our planned retribution. A hint of something Laura had indeed never seen coming. 6 months later, I sat on the terrace of a small cafe in Positano, watching the sunset over the Mediterranean. The view was everything I'd imagined during those years of saving and planning. Blue water stretching to the horizon, pastel buildings clinging to the cliffs, the air scented with lemon and salt. Beautiful, isn't it? Emily set 2 glasses of wine on the table and took the seat across from me. I nodded, offering her a smile. Worth the wait. Laura had been sentenced to 8 years for financial fraud, with an additional 2 years for conspiracy. Ryan had received a slightly lighter sentence in exchange for his cooperation, though his testimony had ultimately proved unnecessary given the mountain of evidence Emily and I had accumulated. The legal battles had been exhausting but satisfying. With the forensic accountant's help, we'd managed to recover nearly 70% of the stolen funds, enough for me to finally take that retirement I'd worked toward for so long. As for Emily, she'd used her portion of the recovered money to return to school, pursuing the degree in digital forensics she'd always wanted. We'd stayed in touch after the trial, our unusual bond evolving into a friendship based on mutual respect and shared experience. When I'd mentioned my plans to finally take that Mediterranean trip, she'd surprised me with a proposal. She'd come along as a travel companion, separate rooms and expenses, to photograph the journey for her portfolio. After some consideration, I'd agreed. Her companionship had proven to be the unexpected blessing of this entire ordeal. Not romantic, but something equally valuable. A true friendship forged in fire. I had a call from my attorney this morning, I said, sipping my wine. The sale of the condo finally went through. Emily nodded. Good. Last loose end tied up. Not quite. I reached into my pocket and withdrew a small flash drive, sliding it across the table. There's still this. Emily's eyes widened slightly as she recognized the drive. You kept it? I thought we agreed to destroy all copies after the trial. I kept one. I met her gaze steadily. Insurance. She turned the drive over in her fingers, her expression unreadable. Against what? Not what. Who? Understanding dawned in her eyes. You think Ryan might come looking for payback when he gets out? I shrugged. 6 years is a long time to nurse a grudge, but not long enough to forget one. Emily pocketed the drive with a nod. Better safe than sorry. We fell into comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to deep purple. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice soft. Do you ever regret how things turned out? Not about Laura and Ryan, they deserved everything they got, but about everything else. Your marriage. The years you spent believing in something that wasn't real. It was a question I'd asked myself many times over the past months. I've made my peace with it, I said finally. Laura was right about one thing. I was too cautious, too focused on someday instead of today. I don't regret the years of hard work, but I regret not insisting on more joy along the way. Emily nodded, understanding in her eyes. And now? Now? I gestured to the breathtaking view before us. Now I'm making up for lost time. She raised her glass in a toast. To making up for lost time. I clinked my glass against hers, smiling. And to unexpected alliances. As we drank, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. I glanced at it, then set it aside. Anything important? Emily asked. Just a confirmation, I replied. Remember that investment opportunity I mentioned? The one Laura never knew about? Emily's eyes lit with interest. The tech startup? The one you put money into right before you met her? I nodded. They've just gone public. The shares I've held for 27 years are now worth... I named a figure that made Emily's eyebrows shoot up. My God, Mark, that's ... More than Laura stole, I finished quietly. Much more. Emily stared at me, realization dawning. You knew all along. Even when you were playing the broken, bankrupt husband, you knew you had this ace up your sleeve. I suspected, I corrected. The company had been doing well, but the IPO was never guaranteed. I didn't want to count on it. Does Laura know? I shook my head. That account was opened before we met. It was never part of our marital assets. Her name appears nowhere in the paperwork. A slow smile spread across Emily's face. That same slightly wicked smirk I'd glimpsed the day Laura was arrested. So while she sits in prison, having lost everything, I'm wealthier than I've ever been, I confirmed. Ironic, isn't it? Emily laughed, a sound of pure delight that carried on the evening breeze. What will you do with it? I gazed out at the darkening sea, feeling a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in decades. Live well, travel more, maybe start a foundation to help victims of financial fraud. I didn't mention the other plans I was considering, the ones that involved the flash drive Emily now carried and certain connections my private investigator had provided. Some secrets were best kept in reserve, much like that long-ago investment. After all, Ryan Williams would be released eventually. And while I was no longer the cautious, predictable man Laura had so easily deceived, I still believed in being prepared. Another toast, I suggested, refilling our glasses. To the future. Emily raised her glass, that knowing smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. And to justice, both the kind served in courtrooms and the kind served elsewhere. Our glasses clinked, the sound sharp and satisfying in the gathering twilight. Some debts, after all, could never be fully paid in a courtroom. But that was a problem for another day. Tonight, I would simply enjoy the view I'd waited 25 years to see, and the sweet knowledge that sometimes justice arrives in unexpected packages. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.